नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये देवं नारायणं नत्वा सर्वदोषविवर्जितं परिपूर्णं गुरुंश्चाजीतार्थं वक्ष्यामि लेशतः हरिः ओम्. Welcome everyone. Apologies for this 10 minutes delay. Some fiasco. A scheduled meeting got deleted, and repeatedly I was doing it in the last minute with my butterfinger. Something or the other was missing. The room was there, but it was not tagged under Purushottama Yoga Club. That makes it difficult for retrieving. It was not with the replays on. Makes it difficult for people who want to read it again. It was not open for all once, so it makes it difficult for people not following the Purushottama Yoga Club to be there. But strangely, when I put all the options on, when I open a direct meeting, one or the other goes missing automatically. It doesn't give me all the options. So I had to schedule a meeting at a 5 p.m., backdate it for 5 p.m. And then, so something crazy with Clubhouse, I think. But nonetheless, let's get going. This is the Pratipadartha session under the Purushottama Yoga Club. This is the second session. The previous week, we looked at the meaning of the first 9 slokas of Bhagavad-Gita. We looked at the context behind the entire plot at which we hear the first words of Bhagavad-Gita. It starts with Dhritarashtra Uvacha. Dhritarashtra is a significance of Dhriti. Dhriti is inertia, right? Whenever inertia has to be broken, due of motion to be an external force to act otherwise. The law states everybody continues to be in a state of rest or on uniform motion unless compelled to act otherwise by an external force, right? So it was all hunky dory. There is a great thing happening, and the war was set. Bhishmacharya is a great figure that we need to remember throughout Bhagavad Gita. Bhishmacharya is central to the entire Bhagavad Gita plot. Bhagavad Gita happens in Bhishma Parva. There underlines the importance of his presence in the entire thing. And Bhishma Parva does not start with anything to do with the war. It starts with Dhritarashtra taking a dump of Jambudvipa's formation, then the Bhumi Varnana. And then around the 13th Adhyaya is where we hear the news being broken by Sanjaya that Bhishmaha Hataha. Shantanavaha Bhishmaha Hataha. Pandavanam, Bharatanam Pitamaha Bhishmaha Shantanavaha Hataha. Na Hataha Jamadagnyena Saha Hataha Adya Shikhandina. So some of the things, right, very beautifully being depicted in the 13th Adhyaya of the Bhishma Parva is where we get to hear the bang. Until then, the story of the war was all hunky-dory. Nobody was looking at it. Vedavyasa gave the divine vision and Dhritarashtra ignored it completely. He said, okay, Sanjaya, let him have it. And Sanjaya has been in the battlefield. He's been monitoring. He's also got the Divya vision, the Divya Chakshu, right? It is almost like the digital cockpit, the way we see the MIS functions happening in the war rooms or any of the places where we keep culling out information, right? When the COVID pandemic was happening, there was a central room created where it's almost like a war room. A lot of MIS coming in, some people on the ground, some people remotely monitoring, but a lot of Divya Chakshu, right? Everyone has been, and Sanjaya has been given that Divya Chakshu. And we see that the beginning of that is okay. Bhishmacharya, the infallible, the one with Icha Marana, has been brought down. How he could not be brought down by Jamadagnya, Parashurama, in the war with Parashurama. Bhishmacharya stood up. But today, the day on that day, during the day of the 13th Adhyaya, which is the 10th day of the war, Sanjaya goes and says, Adya, today, Bhishmacharya, Pitamaha, Shikandina Hataha, he's been killed by Shikandi. Now again, it is not Hataha, he's been brought down, but the words used by Sanjaya were he was Hataha. Then Dhritarashtra goes on inquiry, right? A lot of inquiry happened. Was there so much of adharma among the Pandavas? Did Bhishmacharya, Dronacharya give up, abdicate the responsibilities? Did people not have enough enthusiasm to fight the war? Sanjaya goes on explaining various things where finally he comes to the stage where, okay, Dharma Kshetre, everyone is following Dharma. Kurukshetre, everyone's got their ultimate performance, being tested. That is the field of performance. Kshetra is the field of performance. Samaveta gathered Yuyuttavaha, all the people who are interested, keen in the war. Nobody is running away. No, Mamakaha, my people, Mamakaha also signifies Ahankara. Pandavaha, Pandu, Pandita, Pande, Panda. All of these are significance of Buddhi. They denote Buddhi. So there is a slightly, and the undertone of it, the etymological breakdown, when we see the etymological breakdown, there is an undertone of Buddhi versus Ahankara, but nonetheless, Dhritarashtra is telling, who also signifies inertia, right? Inertia has been broken. Okay, inertia has been upset. Some external force has come. Yatra Krishno Tatah Jaya, that's something that we have reverberated a couple of times before the war came. So this is the recap. This is something that we have discussed. Okay, Mamakaha Pandavaha Chaiva Kim Akurvata, that Bhishmacharya fell. So the whole inquiry of Dhritarashtra is, tell me, how did this happen? The impossible happen. How did this, improbable happen? How did this, how did Bhishmacharya fall fundamentally, right? That's the entire inquiry happening from the 13th Adhyaya of Bhishma Parva to the 25th Adhyaya of Bhishma Parva, because this chapter is primarily the 25th Adhyaya of Bhishma Parva. So this 12 chapters preceding to this. The inquiry from Dhritarashtra has been solely about, tell me, how did Bhishmacharya fall? And that same inquiry continues, is where we hear the Bhagavad-Gita. Right? So this is the 10th day of the war. And Sanjaya goes on to explain. In the first 9 slokas, right? The first one was about Dhritarashtra's inquiry. The next 8 slokas was all about Sanjaya giving an update. So he says, okay, looking at the Chamu army, Chamu is 1/10, or Anikam army, 1/10 of an Akshauhini, right? So Sanjaya is quoting numbers and figures. He says Chamu, which is 1/3 of a Anikam. He says Anikam. Anikam is basically 1/10 of an Akshauhini, and Akshauhini has a certain number, about 100,000 foot soldiers, about 65,000 horses, about 27,000 chariots, about 27,000 elephants. So this Chaturbhuja, Chaturbahu, whatever we call, right? One of the names of that is the fourfold army formation. There is a chariot, there is a elephant, there is a horse, and there are foot soldiers, right? So this is also one way of looking at the Chaturvyuha, Chaturbhuja, and things like that. So he goes on to explain. He gives references to the formation, the size of the formation, the analytical description. So basically, whenever somebody at a very senior level is being given an update, it's quite natural for us to be very, very objective, number driven, quantified. So he's being very extremely quantified. Sanjaya is being extremely quantified. So one of the things that we see first and foremost is that Duryodhana is very, very edgy. The first description from Sanjaya of the time of the battlefield, the penultimate moment of the battlefield is Pandavanam Chamu, Drishtva, Anikam, Drishtva, Vyudham Drishtva, Duryodhana Acharyam Upasangamya Idam Vachanam Abravi. He gets off the chariot. So much of edginess, and he goes to Dronacharya. Why? We don't know. Right? The commander-in-chief is Bhishmacharya. So there is a lot of edginess that we get to see. And then in the edginess, we get to see that, Duryodhana is now showing the Chamu army. Chamu is again, what he saw was Anikam, and what he is telling is Chamu to Dronacharya, which is basically a lost sense of proportion. He's lost the sense of proportion. So one thing coming out very, very clearly in the first 8 slokas is, it's a very, very tense moment. People are losing it. This is the ultimate moment of reckoning for everyone. While the chapter is certainly Arjuna Vishada Yoga, there is a lot of nervousness across the table. Dronacharya. We get to see what Dronacharya does. Basically, he does nothing. There is not a single word from Dronacharya. He is at an Acharya state. He can calm Duryodhana down. Okay, but no, he doesn't speak anything. So there is some nervousness going on there also. We will see the kind of reaction Bhishmacharya gives. Not a very mature, reaction, the way we can perhaps see little later. We will see that. Right? So there is a edginess, there is a nervous moment across the table. In fact, Arjuna was much better. The last we heard about Arjuna, he was blessed after a Durga Stuti. He was blessed by Durga. There is a big Ghoshana, a proclamation happening. Yato Dharmas Tato Krishna, Yato Krishna Tato Jaya. So Arjuna is in a very, very confident mood with all the blessings from Durga Devi, and he is feeling very, very confident. We'll see how it actually goes. So with all of these things, we were at shloka number 9 lastly, where we were looking at we were shloka number 9. Anye cha bahava shuraha madarthe tyakta jivitaha nana shastra praharanaha sarve yuddha visharadaha. So basically, Duryodhana concludes the descriptions given about who are the people. He first calls out some 18 people on the other side, on the enemy side, the Pandava side. Okay, for him, everyone is looking like Bhima Arjuna Sama Maharathis. Like, there is only 7 Akshohini Sainya. There are bound to be only 7 Maharathis. Of course, there are more, but 7 is what the prominent number is because it's only 7 Akshohini Sainyas on the Pandava side. But he can quote 11 names, people at the older generation, people at the same generation, and people at the younger generation. Abhimanyu, Draupadi's sons. All of these people, everyone is looking like a Maharathi for Duryodhana. And then when he goes on to explain to Dronacharya, okay, I have told you about those people. Let me also tell about the people that we have. You should know the people, the kind of the people that we have. He can name only 7 people, right? That's the irony. He could name only 7, and among them, one is Karna, who is not even fighting the war at that point in time, right? So he's able to name only few people, and the kind of description he gives later in sloka number 9 is also there are many other people. Anyecha bahavaha shuraha. There are also many other great warriors, brave warriors. Madarthe tyakta jivitaha, who have given up their lives for me. See, he's already thinking about having given up. So this is kind of some kind of a mood that we can see in Duryodhana. He's not really like Parameshwasaha, Maheshwasaha, Vikrantaha, Maharataha. So some of the names that he used, some of the adjectives that he used to describe the people in the Pandava side, he is unable to call a single name. Samitinjayaha is something that he could say in the previous sloka. Now he's telling Samitinjayaha ete sarvaha. Now they are all tyakta jivitaha. Madarthe tyakta jivitaha. Nana shastra praharanaha. Okay, filled with different types of weaponry. Sarve yuddha visharadaha. They all are well versed with the warfare. Right? So that is the description given. Now we will move on to sloka number 10. I have pinned an Excel file, sorry, not an Excel file, a website from the Aurobindo group. Pretty neat. I mean, to the extent where we can perhaps use it for what it's worth. It's got a very clear Anvaya, it's got a very clear Padacheda and things like that. So let me quickly read out the next sloka. Aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishmabhirakshitam. Paryaptam tuvidametesham balam bhimabhirakshitam. Now let us see how the Padacheda looks like. If you come little below in that web page, you will see Padacheda. Aparyaptam tat asmakam. Tat asmakam becomes tadasmakam. It's a sandhi. Okay, called the Jashtva sandhi. We will see, maybe next week or so, we will keep one session on Sunday morning just to briefly touch upon some of the sandhis. Okay? Aparyaptam tat asmakam tadasmakam. Balam bhishma abhirakshitam. Bhishma abhirakshitam. Well, they have given it like a sandhi. It's basically a bhishmena, like, abhirakshitam, something like that. Okay, bhishma abhirakshitam. Paryaptam tu idam tuidam. So there is something called the yana sandhi. Iko yanachi. So u plus e becomes v. Uvi, uvi. So if you so swara sandhis are nice. There are 3 types of sandhis, right? Swara sandhi, basically coming together of 2 vowels. Vyanjana sandhi, coming together of contact of 1 letter and 1 vyanjana consonant, involving a consonant. A sandhi involving a consonant. And sandhi is basically a point of 2, it's a point of coming together of 2. Even when we perform the homa and all, Kuja Rahu Sandhi. There is something called the 2 grahas are coming together in contact. So there is an overlap of these 2. So Sandhi is basically the conjunction, of two different things. So here, typically Sandhi in the aksharas are basically the coming together of 2 different aksharas. So Swara Sandhis are, coming together of 2 different swaras. So in that O E, if you just extend it, right, just keep repeating O E O E O E O E O E. Now naturally we will see V coming out. O E O E O E O E O E. You will see V coming out. So the sandhis are not something strange. They are very very natural the way they are designed. So tu idam becomes tuidam. Tuvi 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 tuvi. It becomes tui. Paryaptam tuidam becomes tu idam. Tu idam becomes tuidam. Tuidam etesham. A becomes me. So it's not a sandhi. It's just a there is something called the compounding and there is something called amalgamation. When we have 2 metals, people who have studied chemistry perhaps can relate to this. There is something called the amalgamation, brass. It's an amalgamation. the two elements that constitute that amalgam are still like alloys. We have these alloy wheels, right? So there is aluminium, and then there is some other material, metal being added. That becomes the alloy wheel. But the physical properties of both can perhaps slightly be changed, but the chemical compositions are kept intact in an alloy. It's just an amalgamation. It's just an amalgam, right? It's just coming together, no change. So A becomes may. Both the sounds are pretty much intact. Okay, so you just call it a samuha. Don't call it a sandhi, nothing. But sandhi, there is a slight modification. There are three types of modifications. An existing sound modifies to something different. Slight different modification. A new sound comes. Okay, so there is something called adesha or agama. There is a new sound that comes from nowhere, and there is an existing sound that gets modified slightly different. That's the adesha. A new sound comes from nowhere, agama or lopa, like something that disappears, one sound that just disappears, lopa. So there are three types of modification. So this is like we can call it as an adesha. Tu e becomes twi, and samoha, both the sounds are pretty much intact, intact written. Like me is basically m and a. Like there is a consonant and a swara. Swara gives it the direction, and consonant gives the sound. A, me. So twidam etesham. So abhirakshitam. Okay, so tu idam etesham balam bhishma abhirakshitam. So when we look at bhishma abhirakshitam, it sounds like a savarna dirgha sandhi, like a plus a becomes a, like Krishna Arjuna, Bhima Arjuna. Like a lot of these instances are there, like a plus a, e plus e, u plus u, like Bhagavad-Gita su Upanishatsu, Bhagavad-Gita su Upanishatsu. Like we keep hearing such examples. So this is basically the padacheda aparyaptam tat asmakam tadasmakam balam bhishma abhirakshitam bhishmena abhirakshitam. Just call it as one word, bhishma abhirakshitam paryaptam tu idam etesha balam bhima abhirakshitam or bhima abhirakshitam, very similar to bhishma abhirakshitam. So very crazy things to note. Let's see how the anvaya sounds. Anvaya, as we spoke earlier, is the prose order. Bhishmabhirakshitam asmakam tat balam aparyaptam. Bhimabhirakshitam etesham idam balam tu paryaptam. Very beautiful. Let's see. Click on the top. You will see something called the dictionary. Now, dictionary is in the same prose order, but word by word meanings are given. So, Bhishmabhirakshitam asmakam tat balam aparyaptam. Very beautiful. I think the meaning here is nice. Now, aparyaptam can mean unlimited. That is what this website says. Aparyaptam can also mean not enough. Okay, aparimita, aparyaptam. So, aparyaptam can mean unlimited or can also mean not enough. Okay, we will see what is the meaning. Okay, in that. So, Bhishma Abhirakshitam, protected by or marshaled by Bhishma. Asmakam, our. Tat balam, that strength or that army. Okay, that force. Okay, aparyaptam, unlimited or not enough. Aparyaptam can also mean not enough. Okay, so what does it say? So our army, that our army. Look at this. Our army should be this army, right? But he's telling that army, tat. Okay, so there is again upside down, right? When we look into the Purushottama Yoga meaning and how that chapter gives us a link into each of the chapters. See, things are all going upside down. Anikam becomes Chamu, upside down. Instead of going to Bhishmacharya, he runs to Dronacharya, upside down. Being confident and staying in the chariot, no, he gets off the chair and runs upside down. Now, this is becoming that. What is his is actually becoming that army. Right? So in the mind, slight variation happening. So my army, that army of mine, which is marshaled by Bhishma, is unlimited and not sufficient. Because aparyaptam can also mean not sufficient, right? And then bhimena abhirakshitam, bhima abhirakshitam, etesham idam balam tu paryaptam. Marshaled by Bhima, or depending on Bhima, like abhirakshitam, etesham, of these people, okay, in K, like etesham, in K, idam balam is bal, like a bal. Now their army should be that army, right? But he's telling this army of theirs. that army of mine. Okay, so again, everything is going upside down. Urdhvamudam adhashakam. Things are all going upside down. Okay, balam tu paryaptam. Tu indeed is paryaptam. Paryaptam can also mean limited, which of course is limited because it's a smaller army. But paryaptam is also adequate. Like, inadequate, adequate is another word meaning for aparyaptam and paryaptam. So we will see what kind of a meaning is being drawn. Okay, when we see this. So basically, when we come back to the shloka, he is quoting to Dronacharya. And the use of words is again very, very beautiful by Maharshi Vyasa. What he is telling that, unlimited can also mean inadequate, and where he is telling limited can also mean adequate. And the commander in chief of Kauravas is obviously Bhishmacharya. So he calls Bhishmacharya's name. Whereas the commander in chief of the Pandava army is Drishtadyumna. Whereas, Duryodhana has got a preoccupied mind which is only thinking about Bhima, nobody else. So he's now, even when Drishtadyumna, Drupada Putra, is the commander in chief, he's only looking at Bhima, right? He's the fear factor. His nemesis is Bhima, right? He's only looking at Bhima. So when we look into the shloka, come down in the English translation, this army of ours, okay, that army of ours, marshaled by Bhishma, is not enough. Okay, look at this. This is an intelligent interpretation by this website. In the word by word meaning, they said unlimited, but in the summary of the thing, they say not enough, right? For the aparyaptam, he's telling, this website is telling not enough, whereas the word by word meaning, they say unlimited. Beautiful, nice, very nice website. Okay, so that army of ours marshaled. I'm adding that army because this interpretation, this summary is missing that tat, aparyaptam tat asmakam. That army of ours marshaled by Bhishma is not enough, whereas this army of theirs marshaled by Bhima is enough. Right? This is the meaning of this shloka. Very beautiful. So we'll see the Kaurava. So for the first 14 odd shlokas, we will see the edginess is not limited to Arjuna. Whereas the title of the chapter is Arjuna Vishada, there is this nervous moment, witnessed across the table. Like, everyone is feeling nervous. Okay, we will see the next shloka, shloka number 11. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avasthitaha bhishmamevadhirakshantu bhavantah sarva eva. Very beautiful. And every shloka is beautiful. You will hear me saying beautiful, beautiful again and again and again. Padalalitya, right? So, Padacheda, we will see. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avasthitaha bhishmam eva abhirakshantu bhishmameva abhirakshantu. So, bhishmam eva bhishmameva is just a samuha, not a sandhi. But eva abhirakshantu eva abhirakshantu, it's a savarna dirgha sandhi. A plus a becomes a. Right? Eva abhirakshantu bhavanta sarve eva sarva eva. So there is sarve plus eva becomes sarva eva. There is another small sandhi happening there. Sarve eva hi. Indeed. Okay. Let's see what the anvaya sounds. The same words, we need to jumble them to get a better prose order, better sentencing structure. Sarveshu ayaneshu च यथा भागम अवस्थिताः भवन्तः सर्वे एव हि भीष्मम् एव अभिरक्षन्तु. Okay, now when we come to the dictionary, click on the dictionary part. The same anvaya now comes with the respective English meaning for each of the words. Sarveshu ayaneshu, sarveshu in all, ayaneshu, ayana, positions, right? Different fronts of the battle or different positions of the battle, all your different positions of your battle. Cha yatha bhagam, adequately placed. Okay, the respective divisions, like in your respective zones or respective regions, respective units, like yatha bhagam avasthitaha, seated or placed or standing. Okay, in from each of your position, in each of your units, wherever you are, avastitaha, bhavantaha sarve, all you people. Sarve means all. Bhavantaha is, you all, you people. Sarve means all. Bhavantaha is a bahuvachana. Bhavan, like, Bhavan is you. Bhavantaha, like, you all. Like, Bhishmam, to Bhishma only, Bhishmuko, like, it's a Dvitiya Vibhakti. Bhishmam, Bhishmuko hi, like, Bhishma meva. Okay, Adhirakshantu, please protect him. Now see, this confirms, right? This shloka confirms. He's telling Dronacharya, from all the positions that you guys are in the battlefield, whatever you are doing, you guys please ensure that you please keep protecting Bhishmacharya alone. See, coming from the previous shloka, edginess, right? Edgy, very, very edgy. No, Bhishma is infallible, but this guy is taunting. Bhishma is whatever being marshaled by Bhishma is insufficient. If you look at it in another way, maybe that is his way of giving the pep talk. Like people who have watched this Bahubali movie, when you try to taunt the person, he will get more udvega. Like he will get more energy. Like and then he will perhaps try to prove you wrong. The king to be is taunting you on your skills that it's actually worthless, it's insignificant. Then it's natural for some people to get provoked, and then to quell that accusation, they might want to prove something. Maybe psychologically, Duryodhana is trying something here, but nonetheless, the message coming is the army that army of ours, which is marshaled by Bhishma, is insufficient. But this army of theirs, marshaled by Bhima, is adequate, is sufficient. Therefore, from all your respective positions, whatever you are doing, you all please focus only on protecting Bhishma. Okay. So one is that maybe he is provoking Bhishma so that he will take an extra step to prove him wrong, because there is an element of doubt, right? That Bhishma is not bothered about Duryodhana. He is really fond of Pandavas, and that is obvious. Every day before the war in the camp, Drona and Bhishma would go after taking the bath, after the Nityanushtana, would pray with an arghya saying that Jayostu Pandu Putranam, and things like that were happening. It's quite natural for Duryodhana to feel something slightly different. But yeah, nonetheless, it could be provocative. It could also mean that, because Bhishmacharya is Icha Marani, so long as Bhishma is standing tall, it is like a rock solid, wall, between the enemy and the Kaurava camp, right? So, to protect Bhishma, that is where our interest is. Okay, that could be another meaning, but very definitely it shows a lot of edgy behavior. Okay, from Duryodhana, taunting, insulting. This sounds very insulting, at least for some people. This sounds very, very insulting. That just next to Drona is Bhishma standing. They are all together. So if he gets off his chariot, goes to Drona and makes these statements, obviously Bhishmacharya is listening to all of these things, right? Though not directly being spoken to, he's taunting Bhishmacharya because Drona and Bhishma are just next to each other, right? So some edgy moments, some extremely upside down kind of a feeling, and we see the nerves, at play across the table. Though the chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, right? We'll move on to the next one. Tasya sanjanayan harsham kuru vruddha pitamaha simhanadam vinadyochaihi shankham dadmo pratapavan. Okay, this is the sloka. You will see what the padacheda sounds like. Tasya sanjanayan harsham kuru vruddha, kuruna vruddha, kuru vruddha pitamaha simhanadam vinadya uchchaihi shankham dadmau pratapavan. Okay, no sandhi. It's all samuha. Right? Now we will see how the anvaya sounds. Kuru vruddha pratapavan pitamaha, which is in bracket Bhishmacharya. Kuru vruddha pratapavan pitamaha tasya Duryodhanasya tasya harsham sanjanayan uccaihi simhanadam vinadya shankham dadmau. Right? We will see what when you click on dictionary on the top, you will see some English words coming against each of those individual words in the Anvaya sequence. Kuru Vruddha, the Vruddha, the old man among the Kurus, like, the ancient of the Kurus. Okay, but old man, the grand old Kuru, Kaurava. Pratapavan, the mighty, Pratapavan, the very valiant, right? Pitamaha, the grandsire, okay, which is obviously Bhishmacharya. Tasya, Duryodhanasya, means of Duryodhana, Duryodhanka. Harsham Sanjanayan, like, to keep him happy, to develop the happiness in him. Uchchaihi, loudly. Uchcha means up, right? Top. Loudly. Simhanadam, the lion's roar, Vinadya, resounding. Like, Shankham Dadmau, he blew his conch. Now see the reaction. Bhishma, being the grand old sire, Pratapavan, so many beautiful descriptions for Bhishmacharya. He can calm Duryodhana down. Pause. Get into your chariot. Okay, we will manage this. Okay, this is still manageable. The war is still not started. We have an upper hand. Duryodhana could have said that. Bhishmacharya could have said that. But what is Bhishmacharya doing? Cheering the heart of Duryodhana, or to cause cheer in the heart of Duryodhana. The mighty grandsire Bhishmacharya, the ancient among the Kurus, or the eldest among the Kurus, resounding the battlefield with a lion's roar, blew his conch. Very beautiful translation, but sometimes this English becomes a little difficult. But yeah, so what he does, he, rather than calming Duryodhana, he is feeding his ego, right? I mean, that could be one way of looking at it. So the Vishada, the edginess, the nervous moment is not just restricted to Arjuna. This is an ultimate moment of reckoning for a lot of people. Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre. In that ultimate field of Dharma, in the ultimate field of performance. Kurukshetra, Kuru means do. It can be the ultimate field of performance. We keep practicing, practicing, practicing. Finally, we have to play in a concert. Okay, we keep practicing, practicing, practicing. Finally, we have to play in the World Cup, right? So there is a huge difference between the two. When we talk about the ultimate moment of reckoning, it is of the highest order. Okay, not a small one, not a silly one, right? So in that moment, you can't let things go loose, right? There is nervousness. Somebody can, regain that composure and calm the camp, but no, Dronacharya doesn't even utter a single word. Bhishmacharya, rather than calming him down, he with a big lion's roar, then, takes the conch and blows it. Right. So we see there is a lot of thing to read in between these lines. We'll quickly move on. The next shloka number 13, the first chapter. Tatah shankhaschcha bheryascha panavanaka gomukhaha sahasaivaabhyahanyanta sashabdastumulo bhavat. Right? So, Padacheda, to come a little below on the same link, shloka number 13. Tataha shankha cha shankascha. See, Visarga, there are three types of sandhis, right? Swara sandhi, Vyanjana sandhi, and Visarga sandhi. The ones that involve Visarga, right? So, then there are three types of sandhis in terms of the modifications. Agama, Adesha, Lopa, right? Within the Visarga sandhi we spoke, there are broadly five types. There is a shakara that comes. So wherever cha comes, there is visarga becomes sha. Like tataha shankhaha cha shankhascha. Right? Shankhascha bheryaha cha bheryascha. Panava anaka gomukhaha panavanaka gomukhaha. Right? So Panava anaka gomukhaha panavanaka gomukhaha. Sahasa eva sahasaiva. This is another form of swara sandhi. A plus A becomes I. Like eka, eka, ekaika. Right? So similar to that. Sahasa eva sahasaiva eva abhi evabhi. Abhi ahanyanta abhyahanyanta. Like, so abhi aha abhya. Like, sahasa eva abhi ahanyanta sahasaivaabhyahanyanta saha shabdah sa shabdah. This is visarga lopa. Visarga goes missing here. See, saha shabdah sa shabdah. Shabdah tumulah shabdas tumulah. So visarga becomes takara. Like namaha te namaste. So visarga, there is a sh, shutva sandhi, visarga sa, satva sandhi, visarga lopa, visarga goes missing. There are three types of visarga sandhis that we see here. There is one vriddhi sandhi. So different types of sandhis. Tumulaha abhavat, tumulo abhavat. So here visarga goes o. Right? There are four types of visarga sandhis in this one line. Right? So beautiful. Four different types of visarga sandhis in just one line. Right? Tumulaha abhavat, tumulo abhavat. And tumulo abhavat, there are two steps to this. Tumulaha abhavat, tumulo abhavat. So aha becomes o. That is like a guna kind of a thing. Visarga guna sandhi kind of thing. And tumulo abhavat, when you extend it, you kind of hide akara. You don't make the akara pronounced. So tumulo bhavat. You just extend the previous sound by one extra count, extra matra, so that it is implied that akara comes up. Tumulaha abhavat, tumulo abhavat, tumulo abhavat, tumulo bhavat. So akara goes hiding inside. It's a very simple one. So this is the sandhis, right? Now let's see how the prose order, when we jumble these lines, how they sound in a prose order. ततः शङ्खाः भैर्यः च पणव आनक गोमुखाः च सहसा एव अभ्यहन्यन्त. Okay, so the meaning of this first part, if you come to the dictionary, tataha, then, thereafter, shankhaha, the conches, multiple conches, right? Bhairyaha, the kettle drums, multiple kettle drums. Panava, anaka, gomukhaha, the tabors, the drums and the horns, like a trumpet kind of a horn. Gomukha, small, curvy, anaka, so tabors, drums and horns. Cha, sahasa eva, okay, sahasa eva, all together only. Abhyahanyanta, they blared forward, they started blowing up, saha shabdaha, that sound, okay, that clamor, okay, tumulaha abhavat. Tumulaha is basically tremendous, or, kind of a, tumulaha, like a earthquake, right? Tremor kind of a thing. Tumulaha, tumula. So it became very, very cacophonic. The sound, tumulaha, in this instance can be heard to be, so suddenly after Bhishmacharya blew the conch to keep Duryodhana happy, right? Because Duryodhana is ranting, he's passing sly remarks, he's not even talking directly to Bhishmacharya, but goes to Dronacharya and starts commenting against Bhishma and taunts him, all those rants and raves. So to keep him happy, Pratapavan, he makes a lion's roar and blows the conch. Soon after he does that, different other kettle drums, tabors, trumpets, all of these things start blaring forth immediately together. And that sound becomes extremely overwhelming and cacophonic, right? Tumulo bhavat, right? This is the whole description. Now, there is a description, right? Chandanti yasya parnani. There are subtle sounds in life which will give us indication to what's happening. This is one such indication that the beginning was very, very disjointed, disorganized. Like when you start the war cry, it should come in a very, very nice coordinated fashion. But somehow this piece is letting us know, or giving us an hint that perhaps that entire coming together of the different people marching forward was in a very, very cacophonic way, was in a very, very disorganized way, disjointed way, and things like that. Okay, so this is the Kaurava. All this while we saw the Kaurava's entry into the war, how the Kaurava took the war at the beginning of it, right? The first 13 slokas are primarily, first sloka is about inertia being broken. Dhritarashtra Uvacha. Dhritarashtra speaks, right? Dhritarashtra Uvacha is basically inertia, is broken. Literally, we can actually look at it that way. And then he asks, inquires, how did Bhishmacharya fall? What did my people and Kaurava, Pandu people did that, Bhishmacharya fell? Because this entire discussion, conversation between Dhritarashtra Sanjaya on the 10th day is happening at the break of the news of Bhishmacharya's fall, right? So this inquiry continues, and in the update, the 12 slokas given by Sanjaya, sloka number 2 to sloka number 13, gives a very good flavor of how the Kauravas started the war. Duryodhana got edgy. Dronacharya was not 100% there. He might have given his complete in terms of service, time, and things like that. But somewhere something went a little amiss. Bhishmacharya was not complete. Something somewhere went amiss from him also. And what he did also led to the cacophonic beginning from the Kauravas. So we see multiple things, subtle sounds to catch in terms of understanding how they approach the entire thing. Chandanti yasya parnani. The leaves of the Ashwatha tree keep fluttering in a very silent tone. We have to just capture it in a very, very focused way to understand what exactly are the messages coming by way. So now we will see sloka number 14. Sloka number 14 is where we get to see the Pandavas' entry, right? Other than Drishtadyumna coming, Drupada Putrena, just a brief mention about Drupada Putra and few other names by Duryodhana. Now is when Sanjaya is explaining the Pandavas, entry into the war. What does shloka number 14 say? Tatah shvetair hayair yukte mahatis yandane stitau madhavah pandavaschaiva divyau shankau pradadmatuh. Now, the very words, the choice of words used by Maharshi Vyasa is very grand. The first shloka describing the Pandavas, Tata Shvetair Hayair Yukte Mahatis Yandane Stitau Madhava Pandavaschaiva Divyau Shankau Pradadmatuhu. I mean, I would just, I can just keep reciting this all day long and still not be fed up. It's so beautiful. Every word is so beautiful. But we will see how the Padacheda sounds. Tataha Shvetaihi. Tatah Shvetaihi. Shvetaihi Hayaihi. Shvetair Hayaihi. So this is where Visarga becomes Repa. It becomes Shvetaihi Hayaihi. Shvetair Hayaihi. Okay, Hayaihi Yukte Hayair Yukte. So see, the previous sloka we had four different Visarga Sandhis, four different types of Visarga Sandhis. One where Visarga becomes Sh, one where Visarga becomes S, one where Visarga goes missing, Lopa, and one where Visarga becomes O. Right? Now here we see the fifth one, which is Visarga becomes R. Like Shvetaihi Hayaihi, Shvetair Hayaihi, Shvetair Hayaihi Yukte, Shvetair Hayair Yukte. So twice we see the Repa, the Kara coming. So Tata Shvetair Hayair Yukte Mahati Syandane Sitau. No Sandhi. Madhavaha Pandavaha. Madhava Pandavaha. Pandavaha Cha Pandavascha. So Visarga Shakara. Okay. Cha Eva Chaiva. Pandavaha Cha Eva becomes Pandavaschaiva. Divyau Shankau Pradadmatuhu. This is basically what's happening in the Padacheda. Few sandhis. Visarga Repa, Visarga becomes and Visarga becomes Sh. And then there is a Vriddhi. Cha Eva Chaiva. There are three types of sandhis in this shloka. We read how the Anvaya sounds. Anvaya sounds very beautiful. Tataha Shvetaihi Hayaihi Yukte Mahati Skandane Stitau Madhavaha Pandavaha Cha Divyau Shankau Pradadmatuhu Eva. So I think the Padacheda and the Anvaya are pretty much similar. We will see what it means. If you come a little on top and click on the dictionary, you will be able to read. Tataha, thereafter, then. Shvetaihi Hayaihi Yukte. Shvetaihi means white, Hayaihi horses, Yukte. Hayaihi by them, like it's by them. By the white horses, Yukte, joined, like yoked. So Tataha, thereafter, yoked by the white horses or yoked to the white horses. Mahatis Syandane, the big mighty great Syandane chariot, in the chariot. Syandane Saptami Vibhakti, located, right? Syandane in the mighty chariot. Sitau, situated. Madhavaha. Madhavaha is Sri Krishna. Now, Madhavaha is very beautiful. Pravina Bhagini, do you want to quickly talk about Madhavaha? What Madhava can imply? Very briefly,
Oh,
20-30 seconds.
sure, Ajit. Ma would be Mahalakshmi if we take that as one of the things. Dava is the lord of that, so it would represent the goddess who came from the Kshirabdi. So here, because it is representing goddess Mahalakshmi, possibly, the victory and everything, the fortune is represented by her. That could be one of the meanings that we could get. And Madhava would also, basically in the first sentence, it would be Mayayaha Davaha Madhavaha. That could be one of the meaning, the husband of goddess Lakshmi. And it's also like Krishna is the descendant of Madhu, just as how Rama we call as the Raghuvanshi. For Krishna, the Madhu Vansha is also mentioned there. So that could be another reason. um, Ma is sometimes represented as Madhu, the Madhu Vidya, the knowledge of Madhu which is given by Madhava. So that could be representing the knowledge which Krishna can offer. So the knowledge embodiment Krishna could be one other reference. And yeah, there are a few other meanings. So I'll just stop it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhagini. So Pravina Bhagini, some of you, most of us might have heard. This is her favorite subject, the Nama Gita. We've heard a couple of sessions on that. We might have little more. I think we would need a lot more. But as we go forward, when once we are through into some portion of the Gita, maybe it would be time to have one more session from her to explain in more detail the different other namas and how they play out. When we read them in sequential manner. But yeah, Madhavaha, such a beautiful word used. See, the description given by Sanjaya. Now, Sanjaya, we spoke about that in the previous class, right? He is measured where it has to be. He is objective where it has to be. He is descriptive where it has to be. Right? These are all the examples in the previous class. So here there is nothing nonsense. So Sanjaya is completely balanced. Right? He is the balanced head. He is the level-headed guy that we see. Right? So the description is not exaggerating. Nothing. So what does he say? He is calling Krishna the Madhava. I think we heard the beautiful description of that by Pravina Bhagini. And then he's calling Pandavaha, the son of Pandu, right? Now, Pandavaha can be anyone, but he is the Pandava, right? As much as Bhima is the nemesis for the Kauravas, the Pandava is Arjuna. By default, when we say Pandava, by default, when we say Partha, Partha can be any of those three. Yudhishthira can be a Partha, Bhima can be a Partha, Arjuna. So any son of Pruta, any son of Kunti can be a Kaunteya. Any of those three can be a Kaunteya or a Partha. But it is always often referred to Arjuna, right? Pandava can be any of the five, like Nakula Sahadeva included. Any of the sons of Pandu can be a Pandava. But now Sanjaya is talking about not a Pandava, but the Pandava, right? He is the Pandava. So that is what Arjuna is. That is coming right at the end of that Durga Stuti, from where he got completely blessed, Yato Krishna Sato Jayaha, all of that proclamation, we will see perhaps playing out, but nonetheless, the description is very nice, right? So, Madhavaha, who is Sri Krishna, Pandavaha, which is Arjuna, the Pandava, and Divyo, Shankau, the divine conscious, Pradadmatuhu, not just Dadmuhu, Pradadma, pra is a very nice upasarga, right? Prakarshana, like, you can have Kasha, like Kasha is the space, right? Akasha, Prakasha, Sankasha. Prakasha has Prakarshana in it. Like, there is a lot of brightness in it. So, Pradadmatu, not just Dadmu, like, Pratapavan, he blew his conch, like, Shankau Dadmu, Pratapavan. He just blew it. But these guys blew it so nicely. Pradadmatu, Eva, only, right? So, what does it signify? It signifies that, thereafter, then Tataha Shvetair Hayair Yukte Mahatisyandane Sitau, seated in a mighty chariot that is yoked by the white horses. Why do we have to signify the white horses? Right? We will come to that. Now, white horses. Praveena ji, would you like to quickly comment on the significance of white horses coming from the Kataka Upanishad, where we often see horses to be in descriptive of the senses, right? Uh, and white is clean senses. That's the beginning. At the beginning
Sattva,
of it, sattva,
the
right?
Satvika Bhava is represented by white.
Right.
And also here for the Mahati Sandane, I have read that it was given by the Vichitra, Chitra Ratha. So the horse, the chariot itself is the Vichitra Mahati, which is really huge because it had the capacity to fly in the Manovega. So the speciality of the horse is also mentioned in the Mahati Sandana concept here. In addition to it being the Sattva.
So the five senses having the power to pull it in the Manovega.
Yes, exactly.
I think there's a lot of
Uh,
a lot of
And the Chitra
uh,
Ratha basically would give this to Arjuna. Therefore, this is, Vichitra was given. So it has, exceptional capacities, this Ratha itself. So that was also one of the.
brilliant. Thank you very much, Bhagini. So again, right? So when we come to the deeper and deeper meaning of it, we can go on endlessly. Let us just restrict ourselves what we intended, which is the Pratipadartha. But nonetheless, the whole shloka here, the description of the Pandavas' entry is so beautiful. Tatah shvetair hayair yukte mahatisyandane stitau. Thereafter, yoked by the white horses in that big mighty chariot, seated in that mighty chariot, Madhava Pandava Chaiva Madhava and the Pandava Divyo Shankau Pradadmatuhu. Beautifully blue, that those divine conscious, we can somehow see like that. So it's not just another description coming from Sanjaya. It's coming out so beautiful, right? So that's so unlike the Tumula, what we heard from the Kaurava army just before this is Sashabda Tumulo Bhavatu. That entire sound adding up to with the kettle drums, the tabors, the drums and things like that, adding on to Bhishmacharya's conch, they all added to cacophony, abject cacophony, right? So now we are seeing a very different description, right? So Chandamti Yaske Paranari, right? So very constantly we got to see these subtle sounds, like we heard in the previous class that Sato Yato Krishna Sato Jaya coming multiple times. That's also a very subtle sound. Chandamti. So life gives us a lot of these subtle sounds, right? Then sloka number 15, more subtle sounds. Panchajanyam Rishikesho Devadattam Dhananjaya Paundram Dadmau Mahashankam Bhimakarma Vrutodara. I think I need to create a very strong urge within me to stop saying beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But nonetheless, let's come to the Padacheda. Panchajanyam Rishikeshaha Devadattam Dhananjayaha. So Rishikeshaha Devadattam Rishikesho Devadattam. So Aha becomes O, right? So there is one more. Dhananjayaha. Poundram Dadmo Mahashankam Bhima Karma Vrkodaraha. Vrika Udaraha Vrkodaraha. Though it sounds like a sandhi, there is a samasa there, but we will come to that. Okay. You will see how the Anvaya sounds. Rishikeshaha Panchajanyam Dadmo. Dhananjaya Devadattam Dadmau. So Dadmau becomes a common word. Okay, Hebrew. Rishikeshaha, Rishikesha, Panchajanyam, Panchajanyako. Dad, so Dvitiya Vibhakti, Ko, often referred to that being the object. Aha often refers to that being the subject. So Rishikesha, Panchajanyam Dadmau, Dhananjaya Devadattam Dadmau, Bhimakarma Vrukodaraha, Mahashankam Poundram Dadmau. Right? So these things, they are describing. What does it mean? When we click on the dictionary, we'll see. Rishikeshaha, Rishikanam Ishaha. He's basically the lord of all the senses. Rishikanam Ishaha, Rishikeshaha, which is Sri Krishna. Jitendriya is the perhaps the best description for Arjuna, but he cannot be Rishikesha. The only one who has the senses in absolute control is Rishikesha, the lord of the senses, right? The senses come under his adhina all the time. I don't have to control them. It is already under my adhina for him, for Krishna. But we have to be deliberative. We have to constantly try and try and try. After 24 hours of staying away, I have to literally deliberate so much to keep my eyes wide open, right? So we are in that category of controlling the senses. Okay, we need a mind to control the senses, right? Panchajanyam, okay, Dhananjayaha, Devadattam, so Rishikeshaha, Panchajanyam, Dadmau. Panchajanya, the conch name Panchajanya. I think there is a Panchajanya, so there are people who say there is a 5 conches inside that conch, like, small conches. It's a different design. There is a story about his guru, his guru's son, being captured by a demon. So there are some different stories. We will get to that little later. But Dhananjayaha, Dhanam Jayati. Basically, who wins the wealth, right? Dhananjayaha. Who wins the wealth? Who wins the war? So if you win the war, you have the spoils of the war. So if you win the war, you get the spoils of the war, which is basically you become wealthy. So he is that. Dhanam Jayati, Dhananjayaha. This is Arjuna. Right? Devadattam Dadmau. Dadmau means blue. Right? So Rishikeshaha Panchajanyam Dadmau. Dhananjayaha Devadattam. Devena. So it is Datta, given, God given. So again, there is a story behind this also. Maybe for another day. Bhima Karma. Bhima Karma is a person of mighty deeds. Terrific, okay, terrific deeds. Yeah, Bhima Karma. Vrukodaraha. This is very beautiful, right? Bhima Karma Vrukodaraha. This Vrukodara, who is Bhima Karma, who is possible of mighty deeds, he Mahashankam Poundram Dadmau. So, see, the name here is Vrukodara. Yasya Udare Vrikaha, one who's got fire in the belly. That itself is an adjective, but that is now used as a namapada here. That is the name, right? So Vrukodara, which is Bhima, Panduputra, he is called Bhima Karma Vrukodara. He is capable of mighty deeds. See, this is funny, right? Bhima is used as an adjective to describe Vrukodara, who is Bhima. So we know him as Bhima, but he is called Vrukodara here. And he's been described as somebody who's capable of performing Bhima Karma, which is mighty deeds. Very beautiful. Again, this is all Padalalitya. This is perhaps what explains us the kind of compositions that we keep hearing in the olden days. Like in Ramayana, in Sundarakanda, we get to hear that, Hanumanta is described as Bhima. Okay, not because he will be Bhima in the next avatar. It's because he is capable of those terrible, terrific acts, mighty acts. Similarly, Rama in the Yuddhakanda, towards the end of Yuddhakanda, he is described as Krishna. He is Krishna, he is Vishnu. Okay, all of these names come. Not because Valmiki was foretelling in the future, but Krishna means Karshayati iti Krishna. One who is attractive, one who attracts. Right? So that is Krishna. So this is something that we need to note. Like, in the Padanalitya of these great saints, especially Maharshi Vyasa, right? Maharshi Vyasa is Bhagavan Narayana himself, Badarayana himself. So we will not even make an attempt to describe his qualities. But this is very beautiful. Okay, Jiva Karma Vrukodara. This Vrukodara, which also means the one with the fire in the belly, right? This Vrukodara, who is capable of Bhima Karma. Okay, Mahashankam, the mighty conch, Poundra blew. He blew the mighty conch Poundra. Okay. Now, basically describing three specific conches coming out. Okay. And see the order, like, Panch. So again, the way Sanjaya is explaining, one after the other. First, Rishikesha blew, Panchajanya, Arjuna blew, Devadatta, the mighty act, worthy Rukodara, he blew, the Mahashanka, Poundra. And each of these conches also have a name, not like, Anyecha Bahava Shura, and then suddenly all these different kettle drums and all, Sahasayavabhya Hanyanta, very generalized description about the Kaurava army. But Sanjay is very, very specific in terms of naming them, right? So that is the quick meaning. If we have to quickly look at the summary, the way it comes out in this website itself, Rishikesha blew his Panchajanya and Dhananjaya his Devadatta. Vrukodara of terrific deeds blew his mighty conch Poundra. Very simple, right? But subtly when you think over it, I think it will give us little different expressions, very beautiful expressions, one after the other. Okay, then sloka number 16. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakulah Sahadevascha Sughoshamani Pushpakau. Right? The Padacheda is Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putraha Yudhishthiraha Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakulah Sahadevaha cha Sahadevascha. Visarga Shatva Sughoshamani Pushpakau. Right? So what does the Anvaya say? I think the Anvaya will complete with the previous shloka. Dadmau. I think that word has to be brought in. Like, Kunti Putraha Raja Yudhishthiraha Ananta Vijayam Dadmau. Nakulaha Sahadevascha Sughoshamani Pushpakau Dadmau. Right? So the Dadmau, that blue, has to be added. What does that imply? When we look at the dictionary on the top, we will see Kunti Putraha Raja Yudhishthiraha, son of Kunti, the king Yudhishthira, Ananta Vijayam, his conch called Ananta Vijaya. Ananta Vijaya can also mean endless victory. Right? Ananta Vijaya. Vijayam Dadmau, he blew that. Nakulaha Sahadevascha, Nakula and Sahadeva. Sughosha Mani Pushpaka, they blew Sughosha of Nakula and Mani Pushpaka of Sahadeva. So now see, the beauty of this is that it comes very, very orderly, and then every conch has been explicitly stated. All of these 6 conches are called out separately, right, with their names very beautifully. Now, if Sanjaya is giving this kind of an update, definitely it is the subtle sound of what is happening in the war. Chandamsi Yasya Parnani, coming back to the Purushottama Yoga, right? Now, moving on to sloka number 17. So basically, in the last 3 slokas, we saw that very beautifully, white horse led, yoked mighty chariot. Krishna and Arjuna started blowing. Krishna blew his Rishik, the Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his Devadatta. Then Bhima Karma, Bhima, he blew his Poundra, Yudhishthira blew his Ananta Vijaya, Nakula blew his, Sughosha, and Sahadeva blew his Manipushpaka. So these are the six conches being explicitly stated. Okay. Kashyascha Parameshwasah, Shikhandi cha Maharatha. This is shloka number 17. Okay. Drishtadyumno Viratascha Satyakischa Parajitah. When we see the Padacheda, Kashyascha, Kashyascha. Parama Ishu Asaha, Parameshwasaha. Parama Ishu, Parameshu, Parameshu Asaha, Parameshwasaha. There is a Guna Sandhi, there is a Yana Sandhi. Okay, Parama Ishu Asaha, Shikhandi cha Maharataha. Drishtadyumnaha Virataha cha Drishtadyumno Viratascha. There are two different types of Visarga Sandhi. Satyakihi cha Satyakischa Satyakischa Aparajitaha Satyakischa Aparajitaha. There is a Visarga Sandhi and a Savarna Dirgha Sandhi. Right? So if you look at how the Anvaya sounds, right? Parama Ishu Asaha Kashyaha. Okay, the Kashi Raja, who's a Parama Ishu Asa. Very similar, we heard the word Maha Ishu Asa. Earlier, when Duryodhana was describing him, he called him as Maha Ishu Asa, and here Sanjaya is calling him Parama Ishu Asa. You see the sense of proportion going a little upside down between Maha and Parama, which can be bigger and which can be smaller, but slightly different in the way Sanjaya is explaining, and slightly different in the way Duryodhana had called the same person. So Kashyaha, who is a Parama Ishu Asaha, Maharataha Shikhandi, beautiful. Shikhandi is commonly known as Napumsak, right? Without any Pumsa, without any Purusha strength. But here he is being called as Maharataha, very beautiful. Okay, cha Drishtadyumnaha, Virataha cha, okay, Aparajitaha, okay, Aparajitaha Satyakihi cha, right? So these are the different names. Who, Kashi Raja, Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, Virata, Satyaki. There are 5 people. So there were 6 people earlier. Now we are talking about 5 more people. They all blew their conches. Very orderly, right? Orderly, it's all coming out. Right? So that's what this shloka says. The meaning is, and Kashya of the great bow, Shikhandi of the great prowess, Drishtadyumna and Virata, and Satyaki blew their respective conches. Right? So that's the quick meaning. You will see what the shloka number 18 says. Drupadaha Draupadeyascha. Okay. Drupadaha Draupadeyascha Sarvasha Prithivipate. Okay. Saubhadrascha Mahabahu Shankham Dadmuhu Pruthak Pruthak. And then Drupadaha. So when we look at the Padacheda, Drupadaha Draupadeyaha. Drupado Draupadeyaha. Like Sarga becomes Okaraguna. Draupadeyaha cha Draupadeyascha. Shakara Visarga. Sarvashah Prithivipate. Saubhadraha cha Saubhadrascha. Again Visarga Sandhi. Mahabahu Shankhan Dadmuh Pruthak Pruthak. That's the Padacheda, no more Sandhi. We'll quickly read out how the Anvaya sounds. Drupadaha Draupadeyaha cha Mahabahu Saubhadraha cha Sarvashah Pruthak Pruthak Shankhan Dadmuh. Very beautiful, right? See, Drupada. Okay, let's see click on the dictionary. Let's see how the Drupadaha, King Drupada, Draupadeyaha, the 5 sons of Draupadi, cha, also, and, right? Mahabahu Saubhadraha, the mighty armed Abhimanyu. So this is like perhaps this is happening on the 10th day, right? So also some bit of storytelling happening. That Saubhadraha is Mahabahu. Mahabahu has got a mighty shoulder, and Abhimanyu does bear a lot of responsibility. We know that, right? So he will bear a lot of responsibility. But yeah, Abhimanyu, Saubhadraha, Mahabahu, mighty armed guy, right? Sarvashah Pratak Pratak Shankhan Dadmuhu. Each of them, Sarvashah, all of them, Pratak Pratak, one by one, okay, individually, Pratak Pratak, Shankhan Dadmuhu, blew their conches, right? Now see, 6 people in those 2 shlokas, then 5 people in the previous shloka, right? Makes it 11. Now this shloka has Drupada, 5 sounds of Draupadi and Abhimanyu. Okay, 7. Altogether 18. Right? So there is again, this is all happening in the 18th shloka. Right? 18th sloka, we get to see the 18 conches of the Pandava army being individually described by Sanjaya in a very nice concerted way, very nice organized way. And 18, see, Mahabharata has a lot of things about 18, 18, 18, right? 18 Parvas, 18 days of the war. Here we see this 18. Now, 18 basically, there is a Sankhya system called the Katapayadi. Katapayadi means Tadinava, Tadinava, Padi Pancha, Yadi Ashta, and Ankana Vamato Gati. So, this is the basic sutra. Kadinava means from Ka, you have to count 9. Like Ka, Sa, Ga, Gha, Ma, Cha, Cha, Ja, Ja. These 9 letters are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, obviously, Nya becomes 0. Right? Then Tadinava. From Ta, you count 9. Like, Ta, Tha, Da, Dha, Na, Ta, Tha, Da, Dha. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So basically Ta is 1 and Ta is 6. Similarly, that is how we break it down, right? So Katapa Yadi, you can Google, you can learn more. When you look at that Sankhya system, right? Jaya, Ja is Ka, Kha, Ga, Gha, Ma, Cha, Cha, Ja. Ja is 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ja is 8. Ya, Yara, Lava, right? Ya is 1. Okay, it's 8 and Ja is 8 and Ya is 1. But Ankana Vamato Gati. They are read leftwards, like towards the left. Vamata Gati. Their direction is towards the left, right to left. So when you read it right to left, Jaya is actually 18. Like 1 8. Ya is 1 and Ja is 8. Right? So in Katapayadi. And Jaya is the original name of Mahabharata. Right? It signifies victory. Again, very, very subtle sounds. Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yasam Veda Saveda. Small, small things coming here and there. Okay, sloka number 19. Saghoshodhartarashtraणाम् हृदयानि व्यदारयत् नभश्च पृथिवीं चैव tumulo vyanunadayan. Remember, sloka number 13 also had the word tumula. Right? Here also we hear the word tumula, but we will see. We'll see how it is used. Padacheda. Padacheda says, become little below, sloka number 19. Saha Ghosha, Saghosha, like no Visarga Loka. Saghosha, Saghosho, like no Saghosha, Dhartarashtranam, Saghosho, Dhartarash. So Visarga becomes Okara. Dhartarashtranam, Hridayani Vyadarayati. Okay. Nabhacha, Nabhascha. Prithivim cha eva, Prithivim chaiva, cha eva chaiva. Vruddhi sandhi. Nabhacha, Nabhascha, Visarga Shatva. Tumulaha Abhyanunadayan. Tumulobhyanunadayan. Tumulaha Abhyanu, Tumulobhyanu. So there is a Visarga that becomes O, Guna, and then Akara goes Loka. So there are two things that are happening. Tumulobhyanunadayan. Okay, there are some Pata Vedas which call it as Tumulobhyanunadayan. Vyanunadayan or Vyanunadayan. Both don't mean much differently. We will see how the Anvaya sounds. Saha Tumulaha Ghoshaha Nabhascha Prithivim cha Vyanunadayan eva. Dhartarashtranam Hridayani Vyadarayat. Right? What does it mean when we look at the dictionary? Saha Tumulaha Ghoshaha. That tumultuous Ghosha, uproar. Ghosha is the proclamation. Like see, these 18 conches described one after the other became such nicely, such organizedly, but they were also equally fearful, is what it is implying, this sloka. That tumulaha Ghoshaha, Nabhascha Prithivim cha. Okay, Nabhaha is basically the sky, and Prithivim cha, and the ground, Vyanunadayan, they pierced into them, they broke them, they shook them. Like Vyanunadayan, they resound, they started resounding in them. Okay, Dhartarashtraanam Hridayani Vyadarayan. Okay, Dhritarashtrasya Apatyam, Dhartarashtra. Like of the sons of Dhritarashtra, Hridayani, their hearts, Vyadarayat, they pierced, they tore them. Like, so this is the thing, right? So Tumula is used in 13th sloka to describe cacophony, but here it is used to describe the fierce nature of the sound. Okay, but nonetheless, what this sloka is implying is that Saghosho Dharta Rashtranam Hridayani Vyadarayat Nabhascha Prithivim Chaiva Tumulo Bhyanunadayan. It's basically meaning that tumultuous, that terrifying uproar resounding through the earth and the sky tore the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Very good, right? So we will now move on. So again, the beginning of the Pandavas is coming out so nicely from sloka number 14 onwards. It's a beautiful description of the way the Pandavas started into the war, right? Then we will see sloka number 20. Okay. अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः. Right? ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदमाह महीपते. Okay, this is basically one and a half shloka. There are 3 or 6 lines of the shloka. Okay, we will see all 6 lines. Okay. अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदमाह महीपते. You will see how the padacheda sounds. Atha vyavasthitan drishtva dhartarashtraन् kapidvajah pravritte shastra sampate dhanuhu udyamya dhanurudyamya. See one sandhi. Visarga refa sandhi. Dhanurudyamya. Dhanuhu udyamya pandavah rishikesham tada vakyam idam. Vakyam idam. Not a sandhi, just a samuha. Idam aha idam aha. Again another samuha. Aha mahipate. So no more sandhi, right? Only one sandhi. That one visarga refa. Dhanuhu udyamya dhanurudyamya. So one sandhi. We will see how this broken words sound in a prose order. The Anvaya says, Hey Mahipate. There's a Sambodhana happening to the king, right? Dhritarashtra. Sanjay is giving this update, right? Hey Mahipate. Atha Kapidvajah Pandavah व्यवस्थितान् धार्तराष्ट्रान् दृष्ट्वा शस्त्रसम्पाते प्रवृत्ते धनुः उद्यम्य तदा ऋषिकेशम् इदं वाक्यम् आह. Aha, Traha, the sum of the words that we commonly see. Let's see what it means. Let's look at the dictionary. Hey Mahipate, O Lord of the earth, no Mahipate, O Pati of this Mahi, like O Lord of the earth, which is Dhritarashtra. Sanjay is giving this update, right? Oh, after explaining the way the conches started blowing up on the Pandava side, now Sanjay is explaining to Yudhishthira. Sorry, not Yudhishthira, Dhritarashtra. Hey Dhritarashtra, hey Mahipate, O Lord, Atha Kapidvajah. Kapidvajah, Kapihi Dvaja Yasya Saha. Like, one who has Kapi in his flag. Arjuna's flag has Hanumanta in it. Right? So that is why he's called the Kapidvajah. Okay, Atha, then Kapidvajah, okay, who has an emblem of monkey in his flag, which is basically Hanumanta, not another ape, right? This English translation sometimes can be a little funny, sometimes blasphemous to us, right? We don't like that word ape, monkey to Hanuman. Hanuman is very, very real to us. So Kapidvajah, Pandava, so this Pandava who's also Kapidvaja, who has a Kapi in his Dvaja, right? So Kapidvaja Pandava, which is Arjuna, the Pandava, right? We saw that earlier, sloka number 14, the Pandava. Okay, Madhava Pandavasya, right? So Pandava, the Pandava, Vyavasthitan Dhartarashtra, Vyavasthitan or all arrayed, Vyavasthitan, Vyavasthita, right? All the positioned Dhartarashtra, the sons of Dhritarashtra, or looking at the Kaurava army. Okay, Drishtra, having seen, Dekhar, like Drishtra is Nodida Nantara, or in Kannada, or in Hindi it can be Dekhar, like I say Vyavasthit Dhartarashtron ko Dekhar, like having seen, after having looked at the arrayed line of all the Kaurava army, like Shastra Sampate, like Shastra Sampate is basically the flight of the missiles, right? So the protruding forward, the march forward of the missiles, like the weapons are all marching forward, like so basically this army is going forward and that army is coming near to them. So basically, and they're all marching forward with their spears and bows and arrows, in the forward direction, right? So Shastra Sampate is basically all the Shastras are getting forward moved, like they are all marching forward, like Shastra Sampate in the flight of the missiles, which are all forward moving missiles. Pravritte, like having begun, looking at the pravritti, the development of the march forth of this missile. Okay, Dhanuhu Udyamya, bow. What is his bow? We hear that later. Gandiva. Okay, Pandavas, the Pandava, Arjuna's Dhanu is called Gandiva. Udyamya, taking it up, having taken it up. Udyamya, Uthake, like, Udyamya, having lifted it up. Tada, okay, then Hrishikesham, to Hrishikesha, which is to Sri Krishna. Idam Vakyam, these words. Aha, he says, he spoke. Aha, praha, prahu. Like he speaks, like he spoke. So basically it says, see, look at the description. Mahipate, hey Lord, this Atha, thereafter, Kapitvajaha Pandavaha, the Pandava who is blessed with Hanumanta. You know, Sakshat Hanumanta is seated on his chariot, okay, in the flag. Right? It's a very nice, beautiful description, right? Uh, not enough. I mean, if those descriptions that we heard so far are not enough, this is much more. This Pandavaha Kapitvajaha, Atha Vyavasthitam Dhartarashtraam Dritva, having looking at all these people, all these, Kaurava army people, your sons, the army of your sons, looking at your son's army, okay, Shastra Sampate Pravritti, in the forwarding, marching forward of the army line and the weaponry, therein, Dhanuhu Udyamya, lifting up his bow, signifies confidence, right? Signifies keenness in the battle, right? Dhanuhu Udyamya, Sada Hrishikesham Idam Vakyam Aha. Looking at Krishna, he spoke these words, right? That is what Shloka number 20 says. Okay, what does it say? We move to the next one, Shloka number 21. See, these numbers can be little here and there. In some versions, what you see as Shloka 20 can be Shloka number 21. But irrespective, that's the reason I pinned some website link so that we can all see some consistency. So Shloka number 21, okay, according to this website, it says, Arjuna Uvacha, Senayor Ubhayor Madhye, Ratham Sthapayame Chuta. Padacheda says, Senayoh Ubhayoh. Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna Uvacha. There is a Visarga Loka. Senayoh Ubhayoh, Senayor Ubhayoh. So Visarga becomes Sarkara. Repatam. Senayoh Ubhayoh Madhye, Ubhayor Madhye. So one more Rakara, one more Visarga Repatam. Senayor Ubhayor Madhye, Ratham Sthapaya Me Achyuta Me Chuta. So it just Akara goes Loka. So three sandhis here. Let us see what the Anvaya sounds like. What Arjuna is telling is Arjuna Uvacha, He Achyuta Me Ratham Ubhayo Senayo Madhye Stapaya. Which means when we click on the dictionary, He Achyuta, O Achyuta, Na Chutihi Yasya Saha. Like, there is no fault in whom he is Achyuta. Okay, basically faultless Krishna. The only one who is Achyuta is him. Na Chutihi. Me Ratham, my mere rath ko, like my rath, okay, my chariot. Ubhayoho senayoho madhye, in between these two armies, sthapaya, place it. Now we need to understand this, right? The sloka basically means that when we look at the Sri Aurobindo's interpretation, Arjuna says, "O Achyuta, the faultless and the immovable one, place or stay my chariot or place my chariot between the two armies." Now, between the two armies is something that we need to understand, right, very clearly. This army is here and that army is there. They both are marching towards each other. And if Arjuna is telling me, I want to go in the middle of the two armies, basically Arjuna is telling, break the line, go in the front, much before the rest of my Pandava army. I want to go in the front. That's the core thing. And that perhaps is also looking at the keenness to fight for Arjuna, the confidence in the fight for Arjuna. Okay, the interest, the amount of stake he has invested, in this war. It signifies a lot of other things. And then, he lifts the bow, confidently when the march forward is happening with all the missiles and all protruding and coming pravritti, right? Developing of the forward positions of all these missiles. This guy lifts his bow and then goes forward. Okay, talks a lot. So when we look at all these shlokas, shloka number 14 onwards till now, it is showing that Pandavas really, really began well. Amazingly they began, right? And then this is the point at which we perhaps will see a little bit of inflection, okay, because now Arjuna is doing something different. Okay, he is not the commander in chief. Okay, commander in chief is Drashtadyumna. He is actually asking Krishna to break the line, and then Društva, he is looking at the people. Dhartarashtraam Vyavasthitam Dhartarashtraam Društva. So there is a lot of observation happening from Arjuna's side. He is looking at the people. Like there are some small messages. Chandamsi Yasya Parnari. Right? There are subtle sounds in the nature which will perhaps give us some clues to what's in store. Okay, so this brings us to the 90-minute mark of today's discussion. We will pause here. The mic options are open. If somebody wants to come up, please do come up. Would love to have some discussion. We will conclude for today. From the next session, we will look at sloka number 22 onwards, and we will proceed into chapter number 1. Any questions? And apologies for some bit of fiasco in the beginning when we started the room. Any questions? Any thoughts? Anybody has anything to add here? So basically, quickly to recap, the first sloka is breaking of inertia. Continued inquiry from Dhritarashtra, how did Bhishmacharya fall? The second sloka to sloka number 13, those 12 slokas describe the nervy beginning to the war by the Kauravas. Okay, sloka number 14 to sloka number 20 describes a very confident, very divine, very organized start to the war by the Pandavas. And sloka number 21 onwards, we will see Arjuna's involvement slightly different. Okay, he's getting closer and closer, getting more and more engrossed, okay, in terms of looking at the people, breaking the line, showing a bit of extra confidence and things like that. We will stop here. In the next session, next Saturday, we will look at sloka number 22 onwards. Any questions, any thoughts, any remarks, any random thoughts? Vijayji, Pravinaji, Shraddhaji, anything?
Jai Shri Krishna.
You, Ji, Bhartaji, thank you very much for the excellent discourse on the 10 slokas. The beauty of the language, it really has come out, and it's truly beautiful. Thank you.
I think it's easy. These words are easy, is what I gather. The more we chant, the more we recite these lines, the more familiar we get with the words. I think the words will start forming some kind of an impression, and then we start seeking some basic help in terms of breaking what they actually mean, how the word structures are. Perhaps our ability to understand Samskrita is much more than what we believe.
See, some of the times what happens is when the teacher is teaching, it kind of seems all so logical, and we are sure that we can reconstruct it. But it is only when we again sit down and think about it that we see, okay, there are so many gaps. so that gap part of it is still not coming closer, So it still seems to be as wide as it ever was. So yes, I think we are working towards it. It's becoming more and more familiar, and it's truly wonderful. Very, very nice.
Thank you. I think, see, simply put, I'm just taking through this website. Whatever is there in the website is what I'm reading. I think it becomes easier that way, very, very organized. And this is a beautiful website. Developed by Sampadanandaji. Very beautiful. There is an app also by them.
Yes, the highlighting of the words and the connectedness of all the different parts, it's extremely well done. The site also is really, really beautiful. Today, I really had a very good opportunity to explore it, and it's fantastic. Thank you.
They have a WhatsApp service also. You can subscribe to a shloka a day kind of a thing. In fact, there is a website called, there's a big library called Vande Mataram Library, VMLT. It's called Vande Mataram Library Trust. They not only cover Bhagavad-Gita, but they also have extensive documentation around Upanishads, Vedas, and things like that. So, good to explore. I mean, quite decent. I mean, I like this, quite handy. But sometimes the English language is a little convoluted, little complicated. So we'll have to simplify them.
Yeah, actually, they also have one service where we can just type the sloka number, and that sloka with its meaning comes up. And that was a very nice initiative. And their work on Chandas is very good, Bharataji. Sampadananda Mishra's work on Chandas, it's a small booklet kind of thing, and also a multimedia, which is very, very informative. I really like that work.
In fact, I have their 10-book series for the Deva Bhasha series. It's a beautiful augmentative series for school children. Basically, my daughter doesn't have Samskrita in her school. So what I do is every year I take her through one such booklet. Small book, doesn't take much. During summer holidays, we spend an hour a day, half an hour a day. We will be done with one book. So it's easy, very easy. So every year she is completing one module, one book. And it's a very easy one. So a lot of work being done by that group. Nice work being done by that group.
Yeah. In fact, their book Wonder That is Sanskritam is a very nice one for us to read. So, okay. So coming back to our session today, I thoroughly enjoyed, especially when you spoke about the Chandansi Yatra Parnani and then connected the Shankanatha. It's a very, very interesting thing because when we speak about Vedas, the Shankanatha also is the pranavayu of Vishnu, and that is also compared to the Vedas. And connecting that to the Shankanatha blown, in the Dharma Kshetra, it's very, very deep. It's amazing, and that gave a very nice dimension to the whole subtle meanings that we can infer from the Prathamadhyaya, in addition to the Vishada Yoga. So that was absolutely brilliant, Baltaji. Also, the Vrikodaraha and Bhima. I've heard you also speak about this earlier, but today when we speak everything in the context, that really dwelt very well. A brilliant session. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, and we are looking forward to a lot more things coming forward. Jai Shri.
Thank you, Bhagini. I think there is a lot to take away from this chapter, the way I see. Many people say that we tend to water down the entire backdrop of this chapter by saying that he was overwhelmed with the love for the Guru and the Acharya. But we need to also remember that this is the same Arjuna who was, without any necessity prompt, coming from, Uttara Kumara, right, in the Virata war. He was ruthless against the same set of people, right? And he was uncalled for. He had no reason to even get involved in that war, right? He was Brihandale, he was a charioteer. He should have just stayed there. But no, and then see, as a Brihandale, towards the end of the, that Ajnata Vasa, somebody who, does that role. Remember, this kind of a guy, the Pandava, right? Dhananjaya, Mahabahu, Dhananjaya kind of a Pandava, playing the role of a Brihandala, he has come to the state of samadhi. 1 year, if we can curb our instincts and play a role of a music teacher for all the shaurya that he possesses, he should have achieved absolute samadhi. In that state of samadhi, he goes unprompted to save Uttarakumara, right? Against the same set of people, he starts marching. Okay, uncalled for, unprompted. How can that guy fall into Vishada just by the love for the Guru and Acharya? So sometimes we tend to water down. So there is a lot to pick in subtle senses throughout. One of the things could be that in Virata War he was in a samadhi state. I just told you. Right? So there are multiple things to pick and choose. That's where, rather than concluding, it would be good to just read out what are the different descriptions being given by Mahasi Vyasa, and let us soak it up. Let us all soak them up. I think each one of us will have our own. Oh, this is what it could have meant. This is what it should have meant. Uh, I'll come to Kiranji. I'm sure Kiranji had a eureka moment looking at some of the shlokas, but Amitji has come a little before that. Amitji, good evening. Do you want to say something? Amit Tukralji, good evening.
Betaji, sorry, I was yes, I came up, but I just sat down in a car. I just want to come and say thank you so much for that beautiful reading. I think Vijayji, there was a number of uh, I think towards the end you added that sometimes you just the blanks get filled in as I can't get the right words to express what I'm trying to express right now. But it's like the beautiful recitation of the description of the various kind of conches and the kind of sounds that they imply, and just the whole visions of Lord Hanuman, and then a bunch of as you were speaking, there were a bunch of other thoughts going in my mind. And, the best way I can describe it is like some of the blanks getting filled in. So I'm grateful for this room today. We witnessed to this reading as well. So just want to say just my gratitude and so much thanks.
I couldn't follow you completely, Amitji, but I'm sure there were some kind words. Thank you very much. Uh, maybe if the space is little better, maybe I would request you to come back again to paraphrase the same thing. I somehow couldn't follow everything that you said. Kiranji, good evening. Good morning to you. in your time zone. You want to say?
Thank you, Ji. Yeah, when you mentioned about Mahabahu uh, and playing as a music teacher and completely changing, and when at the time he don't have a problem rescuing the Uttara Kumar guy, the other person, right? Like no, who is so he actually used the weapon of something to what you call they sleep, right? Like a injection to just to go to a different state and not really killing. This is the situation when he is completely purposed. Maybe he saw the future. This is the end war. Like we have to go this way or that way. It is not like a intermediate kind of situation. I think that's why he got completely melted and all raga dveshas coming, even though he was so much samadhi, like you mentioned. So when you said mention, like he's a Mahabahu and he played a very different role, right? Like completely opposite role. Like yeah. So that's what I just had a thought. Why he had not had a question at that time. Now he had a question because he just wanted he used to sleep everybody to what someone or whatever it is, and this time here he has to choose like completely binary. That's what I just had a thought. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Kiranji. There are other, I mean, there are multiple different reasons, but see, this is all good for our contemplation. The more we think about it, I'm sure we will all develop more and more thoughts around it. That's the beauty of our scriptures. They give us tantalizingly attractive set of information. They just hang there, like So little bit more is for us to contemplate. A lot of it is left in balance. So, yeah. If there are no further, Shraddhaji, do you want to say something? Good
Yeah, it
morning to
was
you.
wonderful session again, and I love the part of understanding the Sanskrit part of it as well, and it'll help me to chant more properly, and of course every word's meaning when you
Maybe
know
if you're following it
you can
well,
just
Shraddhaji, maybe from the next session onward, somebody else can
yeah
perhaps read the Padacheda, and then we can have some kind of a popcorn discussions around, okay, what is the Sambhi? Maybe that will also
sure
perhaps
sure
help us rather than me giving a monologue. Perhaps that could also help, just to keep a little bit of variety. So, if a couple of people interested in being participating in sloka after sloka, in terms of reading the Padacheda and identifying what is the Sandhi, that could also
yeah
help
that
us.
will be good, that will be more interactive session.
Your volume is very low, Shraddhaji.
To session.
Yes, yes, go ahead, Shraddhaji.
Yeah, I was saying that if we do that way, it will be more interactive. That people trying to find what are the
Okay,
padas in it and how the words are breaking and what I mean how it is kind of so the
brilliant.
technical part
Let's
is
do it that
also
way. I didn't want to add too much of surprise. I was a little cautious of calling Pravina Bhagini to explain names like Madhava Rishikesha. I know it's her subject. It is her skin. She is in her skin in that subject. But I was still hesitant. But then I thought, okay, let me go for it. So I wanted to avoid any bit of confusions or last minute surprises. But let's plan it this way. Next class onward, I would ask you or anybody else in the stage to read out the Padacheda Anvaya, so that once we start reading them in a way we speak our native tongue, the Anvaya especially, the beauty of the language becomes a little more apparent. Yeah, let's try that on the next session onwards. So
sure we should do that.
thank you. Okay, that brings us to the close of today's session. Thank you very much for joining. Maybe this is the pace at which we will go 10, 15 slokas. Maybe we will target 15 if we are really aggressive, but I think it's going in a pace that I think it's comfortable. Let's take it as it comes. I think two sessions, 22 slokas is quite a decent run rate, in my opinion. Let's stick to this. Thank you everyone for joining. This is a very simple initiative under the Purushottama Yoga Club to make the fundamentals of Bhagavad Gita understanding as solid as it can get. What we conduct is an everyday chanting room. We have an everyday chanting room where on a daily basis we provide guidance to chant about 100 slokas of Bhagavad-Gita, and that will enable us to complete the full 700 slokas to be recited in 1 week. We don't necessarily divide them by the slokas, we divide them by the logical group of chapters. Sundays we start the cycle, recitation cycle, with chapters 1 and 2. On Mondays we provide assisted chanting rooms for chapters 3 and 4. On Tuesdays we chant chapters 5, 6, and 7. On Wednesdays 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth. And then conclude that week cycle with chapters 17 and 18, and then repeat, with a new cycle, on Sundays. Every Sunday we start a new cycle with chapters 1 and 2. The more we chant repeatedly when we do this, we hope that we will gain familiarity with the words of Sanskrit. We will be able to better locate what words are there in these slokas. And the more we do that, we do realize, there is a word called yapachaya, yapar, yapar, they're all similar. So we get that familiarity. We start putting some context around those words. And then when we meet here on a weekly basis, once a week for the Pratipadartha, we hope that with the familiarity of the chanting, with better strength of chanting, when we look at the word by word meaning, our fundamental understanding of Bhagavad Gita should be strong than just glossing over English translations. That's the way most of us do. And then once with a strong foundation, the more contemplation we do, we continue chanting, we continue contemplating on the slokas, the multi-layered meanings will start unraveling. That's the whole intent behind Purushottama Yoga. And then anybody has any eureka moment, please come forward, set up a room, share your thoughts with us. We will all become rich that way, in terms of piggybacking on each other's thoughts and each other's experience. With that, I would like to conclude the room. Thank you all once again for joining us. Do join us, if possible, every morning, 6 o'clock in India. We conduct the chanting rooms to help get better, develop the Vak Shuddhi. And every Saturday evening, 5 o'clock, we meet for the Pratipadartha session. Hope to see you all as regularly as we can. And this week is very special. Tomorrow onward, we have a lot of celebration happening within Clubhouse, at least in the echo chambers that we all have developed for ourselves. Right? So, within this echo chamber of the Bhagavad-Gita enthusiasts, so we can call it that way, the Sanatani ecosystem, right? The echo chamber. We have a lot of events planned from tomorrow. Tomorrow, on the 12th of December at 7 p.m. India time, we have Y equals T. There is a club called Y equals T, led by Pravina Bhagini, who is here with us in the speaker panel. There is a Gita Jayanti celebration from 7 p.m. onwards tomorrow. On the 14th of December, which is the day when Sanjaya narrated this Bhagavad-Gita, the 10-day update to Dhritarashtra, Margashira Shukla Ekadashi. On the 14th of December, we have the Gita Jayanti. Under this Purushottama Yoga Club, we have Akhanda Parayana going on. Anybody interested in being part of it, please do back channel me or Pravina Bhagini or Vijayji or Shraddhaji or Kiranji, who was with us, or who is here right now. Kiranji, any one of us in the speaker panel, just back channel us. We should be able to help you accommodate into that Japa Yajna. It's a 24 hours continuous chanting, recitation of Bhagavad Gita shlokas, one round after another, round after round. We keep doing that. If you want, interested, please come forward. On the same day, there are many other events happening. There is a club called, Hare Krishna Sankirtana, where they have a very similar Akhanda Parayana of Harinama, like, the Mahamantra, the Hare Rama, Hare Rama Mahamantra. There's a club called the Hanuman Siddhi, where we have that special Gita Jayanti special. They meet every Ekadashi for a pravachana, but that day is a special thing on Gita. There are groups called Kullam Kulla, there are groups called Telugu Ecosystem. There's many things happening. But within Purushottama Yoga Club, we do have Akhanda Parayana. So if interested, please join us. And tomorrow we are starting a new cycle of recitation for the coming week, guided chanting. Anybody not so familiar with chanting, they will be provided assistance. And for those who are familiar with chanting, it is still a good way to develop further Vakshuddhi and offer the Japa Yajna. And every week at 5 o'clock on Saturdays, we meet for the Pratipadartha. Do join us. Hope to see you all more regularly. With that, on the reverse count of 3, I would like to conclude. But before concluding, a quick check across the table if anybody wants to add something. Okay. In the reverse count of three, I will close the room. Thank you very much for joining. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Three, two, one. Namaste Vasudevaya Preyasa Me Priyottama Samasta Guna Sampurna Nirdosha Nandadayini Mukopi Yat Prasadena Mukunda Shayanayate Raja Rajayate Rikto Raghavendram Tama